I'm hoping we found the right place. We found a path, it's a private road as we arrived, so we must be on the right way. Bit of a special treat for you today.
Oh, can you see it?
Yes, I knew it!
We found it already, and that was an easy find. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an old railway viaduct. This is Percy Beck Viaduct. Well, that was a short vlog. Until next time. No, I'm only joking. But this is amazing.
You can hear it echo.
Boys, we need the wide angle lens.
No, I meant to say that.
Let's have a walk down here. Boys, if we're going to fall, if this is going to happen now, this is where it's going to happen. I think
Can we go see the point?
you walk over to the rocks.
Yeah.
Pass me the camera.
Ah, no. Oh, damn,
Onto the rock. You on? So I'm going to touch the rock, the stone work of a viaduct that was built 1857. I'll give you the facts in a minute, but we're being very careful not to fall because the land around it is very, very muddy. But this is an amazing find, and you can see the drain of where the water's hitting the top of the viaduct, dripping all the way through. I'm not too sure what this is meant to be, some sort of metal structure, but it has been severed and it's full of mud, but it's double lined, and I suppose it'll breach. There's a gap above on the viaduct itself, so I'm assuming that this was actually a lot taller. In fact, I think I've seen a photograph, I'll show it if I can, of a signal on the line itself, and this very much could be the bottom of an old signal. Old signal, that is, it's an old signal. You can see just up the top the gap. There doesn't seem many people here, considering. Oh, we'll get a great view. We'll get a great view here.
There's a light hidden on that side.
So again?
There's a light hidden on that side. Do you see it? You recorded?
Yeah.
Oh god. You get a lights hitting the thing, you have to be careful. Are these some... Yo, whoa.
Hold on to the brickwork.
Yeah. Oh god. I don't really want to do this. Oh,
It's one thing getting down, it's another thing getting up. Known as the South Durham and Lancashire Union Railway, it was built to link the Stockton and Darlington Railway near Bishop Auckland with the Lancaster and Carlisle Railway on the West Coast Main Line at Tebay via Barnard Castle, Stainmore Summit and Kirkby Stephen. Now the line, opened in 1861, became known as the Stainmore Line or Stainmore Line. The ceremonial cutting of the first sod for this section of the railway line was at Kirkby Stephen, and that for the Eden Valley Railway line was at Appleby on the 28th of July 1858. Now land was bought in foresight to double the track eventually, but initially only a single track was laid. Now, before they built the line, obviously before they built the line or build any line, they have to do a survey, and a lot of detail and surveying was planned to avoid building as many tunnels, bridges and viaducts as possible, especially with the looming 1,370 foot of Stainmore summit, but the formidable gradients and the valleys that they had to overcome would eventually be built by stone or wrought iron. The iron viaducts crossing the Tees, the Deepdale and the Belar rivers cost them about £77,000 back then. It's really difficult trying to walk around here without trying to slip. Clean hands, doing all right. So one of these viaducts here near Barnard Castle in Teesdale, a viaduct over the Percy Beck, now mostly hiding amongst the ivy, the trees and the brambles that seem to consume it. Mother Nature wants to get the land back, which is all often the case when lines are abandoned. But this would have been the line that would have had steam trains coming out of Barnard Castle, steaming all along it, going off towards Stainmore summit, off to Tebay to join the West Coast main line. If you're going along the M6 towards Penrith, just past Shap, it's very difficult to see really, but you will see on the left hand side in the valley an old stone viaduct which is now abandoned, and that's where it joined from Tebay to the West Coast main line. I see it so often when I'm travelling up this way. I'd love to get on it, but I'm not too sure you do that. But this is one of the stone viaducts that were built. So if my dates are right, I've bounced a few dates around, but the dates are right because a few dates I found on the internet. This was built around 1860, and the pillars have inserts inside them to sort of lighten their load. Designed by Thomas Bouch for the South Durham and Lancashire Union Railway. Rock face sandstone with firebrick arches, and I think it's called ashlar dressing. And right up at the tops you can see like wrought iron ties pinning it together, which was indicative of a lot of these viaducts that were built. The arches are all made of stone, and there's like what they call, I think, accommodation arches at each end. Now in about 1958 a lot of the woodland in this valley was actually clear felled, and then in 1960 they started to replant a lot of the young saplings. It was clear felled because I think initially they were going to rip the viaduct down like they did with others a bit further towards Darlington. They needed the room and the space to do that, but I don't know why they never did. They left, thank God that they've left this, because this is one of the very few remaining bridges on the line carrying the railway line first to, I think it was Barras, and then to Tebay. The iron trestle viaducts such as that over the Tees have now been demolished, but this one was lucky enough, and in November 1994 it was made a grade 2 listed building, and so it should have been. So it's a survivor of the railways, and for 106 years it was in use with steam trains and diesel trains along the lines before it was closed in 1964. But it's now, I believe it's a private drive, or path perhaps, a private one, to a farm that's on the other side. I'd love to get up there and have a view around, but the sign says no. If you want to find details of how to find this location and have a look at this beautiful structure yourself, I'll put it in the link description down below. Off to our second secret location. This one I am super excited about. The railway line ran across on my right hand side, across this section here where the fields are, towards a place called Lartington, if I've got it right, just behind the hall. And as with many railways, disused railways, they converted them into walkways or bridleways, cycle paths. And that's where we're going to now. We're going to the Lartington section of the line. And somewhere around here should be a little walk along the old railway line. And there's a nice little tree just a bit further down. Now we found the viaduct really quickly and really easily, so I'm hoping this is going to be the same. But on the law of averages, who knows? Here we are. There's some beefy looking storm clouds about. Are we ready for this, boys?
Yep.
Second part of our adventure. So So in theory, before I start this second part of the adventure, let's get across the road. We're actually going to walk over the original railway line first before we walk on the railway line, or the disused railway line. That was the bridge, the road bridge over the railway, but there is a path that you can walk across and down to join what was the original line. In fact, this is it now. This bit here now, this section here, is the path, as it were, the added path to the path of the line. And there should be some features down here. One particular one that I'm very interested in, of the old railway line itself. This is pretty awesome. Oh wow, what's that? That's them holes in the brickwork again, or the studs perhaps. I could be wrong. If you know, comment below. This is amazing to think, boys.
What's that? That's rabbit!
You see that?
I think that's rabbit! Oh my god!
It's absolutely fascinating to think, I say it so often, that technically we are walking across a line here, a railway line that was built here with steam engines and diesel trains.
Where's the traffic on?
Traffic that came from Darlington to go to Penrith. People are sat in carriages. I'm imagining the ghosts of them sat in the old British Rail carriages, or even before then, just minding their own business. Maybe having a Windsor soup and a dash of tea. So I've just managed to find a website that's got an OS grid reference, bless you, and we've been walking in the complete wrong direction. The signal box is more closer towards the road, but it's very overgrown, so I'm quite doubtful that we're going to see anything, but we don't know. I believe on the old railway line here with the station, I believe that's the station, isn't it? The old station.
That's right, yeah.
But there was a dismantled old signal box.
Yeah, way down at the bottom.
So it's back on the path.
On the path right down to almost right at the bottom, where it
is it?
stops before the viaduct.
Oh, there's a viaduct. How long do you think it is to walk? So we've just walked down there and come back thinking you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's probably about 15 minutes walk.
I'll hit back on the path again. Thank you very much.
You can drive down if you
Oh,
want.
can you? It said private, but can you drive?
There are houses down there.
Oh,
people
brilliant.
Down there.
Oh yeah, that's good. Lovely, thank you very much.
Okay.
All the best, bye-bye. See, can you believe that now? We were close to it and we come back. I looked on a map with an arrow pointing at it. It said it was near this junction road here. It's not. We're about a 5-minute walk away from it. But the good news is, you can drive down there. It does say private road, but it says we can drive down. I think we can have special dispensation for that, for our very weary legs. But he said there's a viaduct, another viaduct. Wind's picking up, that wind feels a bit cool. There's definitely rain on the way, so it's probably a good idea that we're taking the car.
What the? You got in it?
Wow. I am so happy.
Oh my gosh, you got in it?
Should we do it?
Yes, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Let's part.
I need the strength to pull me out from the rubble. It's haunted.
Haunted?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Oh, well, good, let's go.
Hey, George. I've actually brought with me a light. I think I brought a light and my monopod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this camera to my monopod, stick this on automatic, I'm going to lift it up and we're going to poke it through the windows and see what we can see. But I think it's got the old ironwork there for the balcony that used to run across the front so they can clean the windows. But this is my first derelict signal box. I'm super excited. And there's a viaduct apparently this way, but we're pushing it because we're miles away from home. Dying for some fish and chips. But we have to get a move on now because the heavens are coming. The line originally terminated at Barnard Castle from the east at Bishop Auckland, but in 1861 the South Durham and Lancashire Union Railway mastered the terrain and they built this line. With the area being sort of less populated than most, passengers weren't really the favourable ones to carry goods and freight. It was to be, especially transporting iron ore from Barry in Lancashire to the blast furnaces in Teesdale. That was definitely the main attraction for the line. 35 miles the line ran from Bishop's Auckland to Tebay, eventually running the passenger service trains, and by 1910 it had up to 7 passenger trains a day running across the line from Penrith to Darlington, and many goods and freight trains also. They even ran special excursion trains from Newcastle down to Tebay and then into my hometown Blackpool. I wonder how long that took. A lot of traffic for this line. Obviously it needed sufficient control of the movements, and that's why I've come to hunt down this signal box here today. I think the boys are enjoying it, having fun. As you know, I love signal boxes. They absolutely fascinate me. The fact that people live there and they kept warm in the winter, looking after the movements of trains. Just think of the stories that could be told by the signalman working in that signal box there. Many hours stood pulling the levers and then ringing the bells. But this signal box obviously would have controlled the trains going over the viaduct. It's only a small signal box in comparison, about a 15 minutes walk. Again, I'll put the link in the description below whereabouts this signal box is. Now the last train that this signal box moved was on the 22nd of January 1962, and then it was locked up and never demolished. Left as a ghostly reminder of what was once on this line. Built by the South Durham and Lancashire Union Railway, again it was engineered by Thomas Bouch. Slight good news is a small section of the line at Kirkby Stephen East is being restored by the Stainmore Railway Company, trying to revive some of the memories that it holds. But can you imagine how epic that this line would have been, this whole landscape would have been while you're travelling on the train? I think this line would have given the Settle and Carlisle railway line a run for its money.